What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. Hopefully, you all had a phenomenal weekend. Hopefully, you all enjoyed the episode with Jason Mackey over the weekend as well. And as usual, on every Monday, we have the wonderful Gary Morgan joining us today. Gary, how are you this fine Monday morning, March 14th?
Pretty good, brother.
Are you okay after losing the hour of sleep? Because I'm fine. Shockingly,
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna be all messed up after losing the hour of sleep. But guys, thank you, of course, for making me and Gary your first listen of the day every single Monday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Make sure you go check out everything to go on in sports on Bet Online sports betting this week. I mean, March Madness, spring training, baseball, pro basketball, hockey. There's too much stuff to bet on right now, so make sure you go do that. But in the land of the Pittsburgh Pirates, they did make a move, picking up Aaron Fletcher off of waivers. Very small move, just to mention it. Um, any initial thoughts on that? I mean, it's not exactly like the biggest thing that we all expected to happen here. But I mean, it's something. I mean, that's the one move they've made since the lockout has ended. So, what were your
it's
initial thoughts on that?
I mean he's Anthony Banda
Yeah.
with a little bit less pedigree and a little bit less of a track record of success in the majors before he got picked up.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean that's really all it is. The guy's ERA in the majors is shockingly bad. So you know, not shocked at all that he got cut loose. And I don't know. Who knows? You never know what to think of stuff like that. You know, Richard Rodriguez was a scrap heap pickup for the bullpen. He ended up being good. This guy could be good too. I don't expect it. And you know, as somebody that covers a team with a $42 million projected salary, get me a guy that I know is going to be good. You know, go get me somebody that has actually recently been good as a reliever. It's a need on this team. They need a backup catcher. They need stuff.
Oh yeah, and that is mainly what today's episode is going to be about. Locked On Pirates family is where is the urgency? There needs to be a little bit of urgency here. Spring training, of course, starts on Friday, and the Pirates have multiple needs, obviously. I mean, you look at the roster, of course, they have needs, but some of them are like needs that are actually going to be like you like need to have this on a baseball team to sustain any kind of success. Of course, you already mentioned backup catcher, and we have seen over the last couple of days that catchers are just getting moved left and right. I mean, Mitch Garver gets moved from the Twins to the Rangers, and then you see Gary Sanchez get moved last night in that Josh Donaldson deal, which I was on Locked On MLB with Sully Baseball, Stacy Gotsulias, and H Town Wheelhouse, and we were talking about that, and that deal to me made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Um, but enough of that. There's just not a lot of options left. So at this point, they should be in overdrive to get a backup catcher because you already know, guys, how much me and Gary love Michael Perez. You know that he's like our favorite player on the Pittsburgh Pirates. We talked about him so much last year. And then on top of that, you have the relief pitching that you need to look at. And what happened to Ben Cherington saying that he wanted another pitcher? I thought he was going to pounce on that immediately. I remember he said that before the lockout. He said, I wanted to add another pitcher, and yet here we are, almost 4 or 5 days removed from when the lockout ends, and
He'll
they've
get
picked
another
one
cat.
guy.
He'll get another pitcher, and the pitcher will be someone along the lines of Tyler Anderson. He'll sign him last second, just like he did Tyler Anderson. Um, Most fans will say, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Yeah.
And if he's done a good job like he did last year of evaluating that guy, he'll come in here and be good. And
Mm,
that's the hope. I don't think that's a game you can win all the time, but
no.
it is what it is. I think that there's a certain degree of like the payroll doesn't matter, and
Mm-hmm.
I get that, but Because at some point when you're rebuilding, you want to see the young guys play. So you don't want to be bringing in guys here that are going to block them from playing. That was the point of getting them, right? But
Yeah.
there's certain positions where we're not ready for that. The catching in particular. You cannot go into this season expecting Roberto Perez to do something he's never done, which is
No.
carry the weight of catching on a daily basis. And if you go in with Michael Perez as a backup, I, I question the logic of that. He's a guy you just cut. You literally said you didn't care if he made it through waivers or not. Now you're going to tell me that you bet on him as your backup with an injury prone starter? Nah. Go
Yeah.
get somebody.
And that was what I was about to touch on with Roberto Perez is when you pick this guy up that he has an injury history. He does. He normally has like back issues. He's had back issues in the past. And again, you're not expecting Roberto Perez to start 150 games. He's not Jacob Stallings, at least health wise.
I don't know
Well,
how you
or
could
as a
expect
player.
him. I don't know how you could expect him to start 80. He hasn't
Yeah.
done it. So I mean, like to call him a starter is a stretch. He may be starter quality when he plays, but he's not going to play. Over half the games. If you ask me, I think that's a lot to ask.
Yeah,
So
it is.
what are they doing now? I'll sit here and tell you, the catching market, it's non-existent. There isn't
Mhm.
anything on free agency that you want. I mean, nothing. And I mean, nothing that would improve your situation at all. I'd rather see Jason DeLay up here than what I see on the free agent market, and we may very well see that.
Mhm.
But they're
Yeah.
going to have to swing something.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day as well, I've heard they said they like Carter Benz a lot. You might see that come into the cards. They like a lot of the catching prospects that are down there, but also at the end of the day, is do you really want to bank on a prospect being up here as well as one of your backup catchers or your backup catcher? Because then at that point, you're kind of just swinging for the fences, which is fine, but it's also not really fine when, as you've mentioned already, Roberto Perez is just not going to be able to service you probably over 100 games. Like, it'd be different if he could, and you know that he could, but when you're talking about half of your season needs to be filled by a certain spot, I think they need to have some urgency there. And we're going to talk about the urgency they need to have in other areas as well. But I also want to let you guys know, as I mentioned before, that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Of course, that as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot going on in the sports world. It is that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport and wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. And BetOnline is where the game starts. And while you guys make me and Gary your first listen of the day every single day, make sure you make out. Yeah, I mean you can make out with him if you want, but I don't know if he'll like it. But make Locked On MLB Prospects your second listen of the day every single day. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So now we've talked about backup catcher at length. I think I've talked about backup catcher on this podcast like the last 3 days of the week. But there's other things to look at here that are going to be problem solvers. Now, some of them are good, some of them are bad. You've already mentioned relief pitching, starting pitching, even potentially, but at least with starting pitching, there's a quantity number there. Me and Jason talked about that there's a lot of guys like Miguel Yajure and Max Kranick who are still yet to be talked about as even potentially starting when they very well could start or even be in the bullpen potentially. But then you have some fun things to look at, I think, heading into the spring trading window, like the idea of the middle infield stuff, like the idea of the outfield stuff. And then does Key Brian Hayes finally kind of put it all together? So what are you, I've been asking all the guests that I've had on the show, and you were like, I asked Jason, now I'm asking you, what are you most looking forward to in spring training, and what would you like to most see?
I mean, I think the first and foremost, this team can't afford to have any major injuries to, either Brian Reynolds or Brian Hayes or, Roberto Perez. They've really got to stay pretty healthy, I think, with
Mm-hmm.
at least that big three. So, health, for one thing. Um, I think middle infield's going to be interesting. I, I don't, right now as we sit here, see O'Neill Cruz making it right out of spring
No.
unless they have expanded rosters. If they have expanded rosters, which they've been talking about potentially starting with 30, like we did in 2020, it'd be really, really hard to tell this fan base that O'Neill Cruz isn't one of your 30 best players. You
Yeah,
know,
it would be.
so I'm not sure they'd get away with that. And if he comes up, he's going to start, and that obviously changes things a little bit. So we'll see. I'm interested to see Diego Castillo. Um, I think Diego Castillo could be a pretty good utility guy on this team. And if they like his stick enough, I think he could be a DH candidate. Rodolfo Castro is right in that territory. That's a position this team needs filled. I don't think Michael Chavez can play enough positions to hold it down. So I think that's open for discussion.
Oh yeah, and it's always great when you talk about utility guys because you can't see his name, but right there, Mr. Josh Harrison jersey, one of my favorite guys, the ultimate utility man the Pittsburgh Pirates used to have. But you actually gave us a good segue to talk about the non-roster invitees of this team. Fun fact: Michael Perez was on this list of a bunch of players that are on this list. Of course, he's not the only like sad one. There are actually a lot of fun ones. Um, One of the names that actually poked out to me that I'm very excited to see is you got Nick Gonzalez on here. You got Mason Martin on here. So you have a lot of the bigger guys on here. That was like obviously like, oh, okay, cool. But we've talked about them before, and I keep talking about the middle infield so much that it's probably a nauseum to most of the listeners at this point, but it's still fun. But one guy I think that gets lost in the fold, and you've even talked about him before, is G1 Bay. As soon as I saw his name on here, I was like, I'm excited to see what this kid can do over these couple weeks. I think it's going to be fun to see. He was one name that poked out to me. Jamie Ritchie. I don't know if he does anything as a catcher really that big, but you know, with the way the state of the catcher position looks right now, you have Carter Benz, Henry Davis, Taylor Davis, Michael Perez, Jamie Ritchie, Andy Rodriguez as non-roster invitees. You got to take a close look at all those guys with the state of everything going on right now, right?
Take a close look at all those guys, but a lot of them
They're
don't
not
have a
ready yet.
prayer of
Yeah,
making
they're
this
not
team.
ready yet.
Carter Binns doesn't either. I don't even know who's starting that rumor. Right? Yeah, I know the Pirates like him. They obviously do. They went and got
Yeah.
him last year. But that kid ain't ready. I'm sorry. I mean, he's
No.
he's a double A catcher. I think he should start in double A. I don't see. I didn't see it defensively last year. And I didn't see it with the bat either, but at least if I saw it defensively, I could be like, oh, okay, yeah, he's an old enough prospect. Get him up here. At least we'll have a nice glove. I don't see it,
Hmm.
so I need to see something from him first. I am excited to look at all the other guys, and yeah, Richie. Okay, that'll be interesting. Um, I think for me, outfield is interesting. I'd like to really see if it is truly an open competition for who stays. We often just assume that Greg Allen and Anthony Alford are going to make up the 3-4 combo of the outfield. Um, does Jared Oliver really have a shot? He's
Yeah.
on the 40. Um, I don't know. He's not Ben's guy, but I don't think he has any less potential or speed than Anthony Alford or Greg Allen. So I'd like to see him. And can Travis Swaggerty actually pull it off?
Hmm.
Is he going to start in AAA or does he get a crack at just coming up because of all the misfortune he's experienced. The other interesting outfielder out on the list for the NRIs was Bly Madris.
Hmm.
He's been around a long time, so first of all, very happy for him that he finally gets the spring training invite officially, not just in like a platoon role in a split squad type thing. So happy for him. Really like the way he's developed. I think he's ultimately roadblocked here, but it'd be cool if he ended up really putting on a show this spring and just surprising everybody.
Oh yeah, and I agree 100%. And then I was also going to touch on this just for a second because I thought it was funny. I remember one of the biggest things before the lockout that Pirates Twitter was freaking out about was losing Cal Mitchell, and then the Rule 5 draft gets canceled this year anyway, so now he's still here. And he is a non-roster invitee as well. Um, and then you have some other guys, Cody Bolton. I think that'll be a fun guy to watch pitch a little bit. Michael Burrows, another guy that we mention a lot on this
Yeah.
podcast. Jared Eichhoff, Adrian Florienso. So a lot of filling out guys. I'm also excited to see Matt Frazier. I think that's
Yeah.
going to be a little fun too. A lot of those Greensboro guys that we talked about last year will be down there in spring training. Hunter Stratton, another guy that you, I believe, enjoy a lot, right?
Yep. I think he's got a good shot to be a nice bullpen arm this year. Like, good shot to make it out of spring, really.
Oh yeah, and
So,
with the non-roster invitees as well comes a lot of questions about spring training. So that is what we will get to in our final segment. But before we do that, I want to let you know about the wonderful people over at Built Bar. Of course, Built Bar is the best protein bar on the entire planet. They are absolutely amazing. Built Bar Puffs are, of course, the first protein infused strawberry. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. And not only are puffs covered in real chocolate, all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein, and make sure you place your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 2 to 300 calories. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off of your order when you use the promo code LOCKED15 and invest in the best protein bars on planet Earth. Now, this is more of the opinionated side of things with spring training, especially with kind of like a question that would you would have. But I mean, there's plenty of questions surrounding this team right now that we've already mentioned on this podcast, and plenty that we could mention for probably about an hour and a half if we really sat here that long. But what question do you think needs to be answered on or off the field for the like for spring training before we get to the regular season?
I mean, to me, catching has to be. I cannot go in like this. I think it's dangerous. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's something they can let slide. Really, the bullpen is second. They have to have somebody in the bullpen, and I don't even care if it's Richard Rodriguez at this point. Just somebody established that we know that we can count on as an arm out there. Besides, like Sam Howard and Stratton and Bednar, and I'd really like to see them not move anybody. Like
Yeah.
we don't need to lose anybody else from that bullpen. So I mean, it may not be the smartest team building thing ever, but hold on to Stratton because the bullpen just can't afford it anymore. And I just think at some point it becomes disingenuous to tell these young players that are coming up that you're trying to win if you take everything away from them to hold a lead, and you take everybody away from them to help run a pitching staff on the field, and you have to have those certain ducks in a row to just not even be competitive, but just be competent.
Yeah.
And I think I'd settle for competent this year. I'm not looking for like 82 wins, but
No.
don't look like you've put kindergartners out there to that think they're playing kickball. I want like real baseball players a little bit. They have to work with these kids. I think that to me is their derelict of duty if they go in and don't do anything for the bullpen and catching.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. But one of the things that I've mentioned with you before that I would love to see is when they were talking about the battles of spring training, like this, the middle infield and the outfield. I want to actually see it. Like, I don't want it to just be, oh, Anthony Alford, your spot is full because you've been here.
Right.
Or Kevin Newman, your spot is there because you've been here. I understand they pay Kevin Newman like that, but it wouldn't be the first time the Pirates paid somebody to be a starter and he wasn't good. Trust me, I've watched this team since I was 4 years old. It would not be the first time they've done that. But one of the biggest questions that I want to see answered as well is I actually had it in my head and forgot. Oh, actually, no, I remember now. Is a lot of executives have talked about this already with the shortened spring training. Is talking about pitching at length, and you've talked about relief pitching. I'm like genuinely scared to see how arms hold up over these couple weeks because a lot of spring training, as you already know, is arms catching up
Yeah.
to the game and everything. And normally they would have reported in the second week of February. So now some of them are reporting now, and I just genuinely hope that we don't have like a repeat of the season last year where the arms got really tired. But I don't know if it will
I'm
happen.
sure we will to a certain degree.
Yeah,
But I mean, and you just talked to Jason, and I don't know if he was down there already when you talked to him, but
he is.
for the most part, what I'm hearing is most of these guys were already on their own program
Okay.
and had started throwing a little bit, so we're not necessarily starting out from zero. That said, I feel like it's kind of just the trend with this team has been on anyway, where they're
Hmm.
doing these shorter starts and whatnot. So I don't know if it's going to look much different.
Yeah, I agree. And that was one thing that Jason said as well is Derek Shelton's just not a big guy on third time through the order. So you're going to see a lot of like, once you get there, you got to prove to me that you can get there. That was Jason Mackey of the Pittsburgh
Yep,
Post Gazette this weekend saying that. And I agree 100%. I mean, until you find a pitcher that can prove he can go through the order more than twice, you have no reason to pitch the third time. You just
that
don't.
said, as a parent, you can't just not trust your kid until he's 20. You have to
That
at
is
some
true.
point trust that they're going to do what you've given them the leash to do, right? And I think that's a mistake there. Like, and you saw last year, like with Tyler Anderson. Tyler Anderson would go deeper into games because he had that trust from the jump. I'd have to imagine if Quintana is even okay, he'll have that trust from the jump, and they'll let him go a little deeper. Well, you're never going to get these other guys to reach that point if you don't let them.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry, you got to let it happen. I'd rather see Brubaker get tired and give up home runs in the sixth than watch him slowly get tired the entire year and give up home runs in September. You got to let him fight through it.
Yeah, got to have some adversity. It's one thing
Nope.
that this team has not gone through in a very long time, I don't think, as actual adversity. Of course, by next week, me and Gary will actually have games to talk about. So that's going to be fun. There is the off chance that I will be in Bradenton this weekend actually for the two contests. I am not saying that as a definite yet. I just wanted to let Locked On Pirates family know just in case, because if I am, I will be down there Friday and Saturday, and you will get an episode both days if I am down there. So there's the off chance that it does happen. We'll see. But on today's episode, we recapped a bunch of stuff that's going to be happening. By the end of this week, we do get games. So next Monday, of course, me and Gary will have some actual baseball to talk about. So that'll be very fun. But Gary, what do you have going on the rest of this week before we see you again next Monday?
Well, I mean, for one thing, I'm actually writing about baseball again, which
Yeah.
is really, really nice. And readers seem to be really enjoying it. So today's five thoughts will probably be pretty fun. Um,
Hmm.
I think people will really enjoy that stuff. And the fan forum, we're gonna have Jason Mackey on this week as well. Um, so whatever Ethan talked about, I'll listen to make sure I don't re-ask, so it's different, and we'll have a good time.
Oh yeah, of course. And over here at Locked On Pirates, as I mentioned to you guys Friday, this is the last 3 times a week that you will have for 7 months. So we will be 5 days a week moving next week. So that is going to be very fun. We're going to have baseball to talk about by the end of this week. I will have one more episode to you guys before we have a preview episode on Friday featuring the Pirates and Yankees spring training opener. I don't know what we're going to be previewing about it just yet, because nothing has really come out about it, but we will see. And before you guys head off of here, thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen, Locked On MLB Prospects your second listen. Make sure you make Locked On MLB your third listen of the day. I was actually on there for about 50 minutes talking about everything that was going on in the world of baseball yesterday, from the Josh Donaldson trade to Josh Harrison getting a contract once again to a bunch of other random things that were all going on. But with all that said, make sure you go check out Gary's Pirates Fan Forum on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Network. Make sure you check out Inside the Bucks Basement, where I will also be doing work with Gary this season. So that will be very fun. And until next time, guys, me and Gary will see you on the flip side.